In this video, I'm going to show you 4 super helpful shortcuts in calculus called derivative rules. These let you find slopes, aka derivatives, way faster, no limits needed. These are super helpful to know, so if you need a refresher or you just want to get better at them, I'll walk you through the power rule, product rule, quotient rule, and chain rule. So let's start with the power rule. This one's super easy and you'll use it all the time. If the function is just raised to an x power, do this. If f of x equals x to the n power, then f prime of x equals n times x to the n power minus 1. So basically what you're doing is bringing the exponent down and multiplying it by the function and subtracting 1 from the exponent. For example, if f of x equals x to the 5th power, then the derivative has to be 5 times x to the 5 minus 1. So it would be 5x to the 4th power. And don't forget about square roots. For another example, if f of x equals square root of x, that is also equal to x to the 1/2. So we can use power rule on that and move the 1/2 in front of the x, multiplying it, and subtract 1 from 1/2, the exponent. So we would get 1/2 x to the negative 1/2 for the derivative. And that's the power rule. Now onto the product rule. The product rule is for when you're multiplying two functions. The formula is if f of x equals u of x times v of x, then f prime of x equals u prime times v plus u times v prime. The power rule simply is you take the derivative of the first function times the second, then add the first times the derivative of the second. Now let's try an example. Let's say f of x equals x squared times sine x. So first, we want to take the derivative of x squared using the power rule, which we just went over. The power rule means the derivative of x squared is equal to 2x. And then we do the derivative of sine x, which is just a basic trig derivative that you want to have memorized. And we know that the derivative of sine x is cosine x. So now we can just plug in the derivative of the first function multiplied by the second function and then adding the first function times the derivative of the second function. So we would get f prime of x equals 2x times sine x plus x squared times cosine x. Now moving on to the quotient rule, you use this when dividing two functions. So if f of x equals u of x over v of x, then f prime of x would equal u prime times v minus u times v prime divided by v squared. Let's do an example. Let's do f of x equals x squared plus 1 divided by x plus 3. Let's take the derivative of the top first. X squared plus 1, the derivative, we would use the constant rule and the power rule. The constant rule is just every constant, the derivative equals 0. So using the power rule, we get 2x as the derivative for the top. For the bottom, x plus 3, we get the derivative equals 1. Because 3 is a constant, which would equal to 0 as the derivative, and x has an imaginary 1 exponent, so we would move the 1 to the front. 1 times x to the 1 minus 1, according to the power rule, so we're left with the derivative equaling to 1. So now we can just plug what we got into our formula for f prime of x for the quotient rule. So it's the top derivative, 2x times the bottom on its own, x plus 3, minus the top regular, x squared plus 1, times the bottom derivative, which is 1, all over the bottom squared, x plus 3 squared. So that's what we get for f prime of x using the quotient rule. Last but not least, we have the chain rule. This is used when there's a function inside of another function. For example, a function being raised to any certain power. Let's try f of x equals 3x squared plus 1 all to the 5th power. So what you want to do is take the outside derivative, leaving the inside on its own, then multiply by the derivative of the inside. It'll look something like this. If f of x equals inside to the n power, then f prime of x equals n times the inside to the n minus 1 times the derivative of the inside. Let's try our example, f of x equals 3x squared plus 1 all to the 5th power. The outside derivative would be using the power rule. Move 5 to the front and subtract 1 from the exponent. We would get 5 times 3x squared plus 1 to the 4th power. Now let's do the inside derivative. 3x squared plus 1 derivative equals 6x. So our final answer, plugging all our things back into the formula, is the derivative of the outside, 5 to something to the 4th power, and the inside on its own, 3x squared plus 1, so 5 times 3x squared plus 1 to the 4th power, multiplied by the derivative of the inside, 6x. Boom! That's it, and you're done. Alright, and just a quick recap of the 4 rules. Power rule, x to the n becomes n times x to the n minus 1. Product rule, u prime times v plus u times v prime. Quotient rule, u prime times v minus u times v prime, all divided by v squared. And the chain rule, the outside derivative times the inside derivative. Thanks for watching. Bye!